If you're curious about moving to Charleston and wondering if it's the right move for you, this video is going to talk about the good and the bad about living in Charleston from my 2 decades of firsthand experience. So stick around, we'll find out. Let's talk about my favorite pro of living in Charleston. It's the people. The people in Charleston are the nicest people on the planet. I love to travel. I've lived in multiple cities in my life, but this is by far the nicest people you will ever find. They smile at you when you walk by them on the street. Your friends genuinely care about you. Your neighbors check in on you, and everyone here is polite. In fact, Charleston was voted the #1 most polite city 8 years in a row in all of America. So why are the people of Charleston so polite? Well, I think it's because the city's so nice. The weather's nice and it's a great lifestyle here, so everybody's just kind of in a good mood. If you're all feeling good, you're gonna treat each other really well. That's why I think people are so nice. But it extends beyond that. I think something about Southern hospitality, where it's just the right thing to do to take care of your neighbors and take care of your community. There's a sense that everyone in this community is part of my responsibility. That's the Southern hospitality way. My kids experience it at school. Their friends at school are super nice to them. And we're not from here. I moved from the north 20 years ago, and when I got here, everybody welcomed me because that's how nice they are. Now, sure, they ribbed me for being a Yankee, but in time, they accepted me as one of their own. And if you're moving from elsewhere, they will you too. So the people is definitely my favorite part of Charleston. Genuine smiles, genuine care, people who want to check in on you, who want to be friends with you. Your sense of belonging and your sense of connection will never be higher than it has been once you move to Charleston. Now, for our first con of living in Charleston, let's talk about the elephant in the room. It's expensive. The cost of living in Charleston is higher than many places in America. It starts with housing costs. When I first moved here, I bought my first condo for $125,000. That was amazing. At the time, I didn't know that it was such a good deal, but now the median home price in Charleston County is $600,000. Since the beginning of COVID 2020, we've seen house prices double in just the last 5 years, and they don't show any signs of slowing down. So housing costs will be your biggest cost. The next cost is insurance costs. You've got normal homeowners insurance, plus flood insurance, plus wind and hail hurricane insurance, and I recommend earthquake insurance. All of this adds up. Your total insurance costs might be $5,000 to $10,000 per year. Next costs you've got are groceries, which are a little bit more expensive here in Charleston, and dining out. The cost to dine out, even at modest restaurants, is more expensive in Charleston than it is in other parts of the country. Some other costs to consider about moving to Charleston: your auto, parking costs, utility costs, and things to do like golf or boating or other hobbies that you have. Overall, I think the #1 con is the cost of living in Charleston. The next big pro of living in Charleston is the weather. I moved from the north and it was cold. We had to shovel snow. We had to scrape snow off of our cars. And even on nice days, it was raining and muddy and sleet. In Charleston, you don't have any of that. We've got 200 days of sunshine. And today, it's overcast in the middle of summer. That's a great thing. We're talking mid-70s on an overcast summer day. The best weather in Charleston by far is the fall. In the fall, we get those perfect 70-degree days, and the water is still warm enough to go swimming at the beaches. Other weather that's really nice is the spring. When the azaleas are blooming, it might be the most beautiful time in Charleston. The winter is pretty mild. You're talking about 50-degree weather days and 60-degree weather days, and those are our typical January, December weather. Now, most people would say the worst weather season in Charleston is the summer, but it happens to be my favorite season. We're in the summer right now, and it's awesome because the summer is when you're outside boating, it's when you're going outside to the beach, it's when you're spending a lot of time in the water doing the things you love to do. The weather in Charleston is a year-round fun thing. You get to play golf, You get to go outside for a walk every single day of the year. When it rains, the thunderstorms come in and then roll away. There's never like a full day where you just don't go outside unless maybe there's a tropical storm, which happens very infrequently. I think the weather is one of the biggest pros of living in Charleston. By the way, if we haven't met yet, my name's Matt O'Neill. I'm a real estate expert here in Charleston, South Carolina, and my team and I have helped 5,000 families make a great move to live in Charleston. If you would like, hit subscribe on that YouTube channel because we post videos about what it's really like in Charleston every week. Con number 2, traffic. Let's talk about what happens when 7 million tourists descend on a city that has cobblestone streets that can't be widened and horse-drawn carriages that slow everything down. Traffic can be a true bear. Thing is, Charleston is growing very fast. People are moving here at a pretty rapid rate, but our road systems can't easily be widened. That's because there are bridges everywhere, and widening a bridge is crazy expensive. So we have bottlenecks when it comes to big bridges. From downtown to Mount Pleasant, you cross the Cooper River. That's the Arthur Avenel Bridge. And in rush hour traffic, like 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., that bridge can become a parking lot. So you're gonna wanna avoid that bridge when you can, but if you live in Mount Pleasant or you need to travel there during those hours, you're gonna spend some more time in traffic. If you go from downtown to West Ashley or James Island or Johns Island, you're gonna be crossing the Ashley River. That also is bridges. Now, if you are on Johns Island, you're gonna be going over Maybank Highway and there's another bridge, and that bridge can add another 30 minutes to your commute just because of how slow it gets. And let's not even talk about the bridge on Sullivan's Island, because if a boat is coming through and it needs to be lifted, you could be sitting there for literally 20 minutes waiting for one person on a sailboat to get through before you. So traffic times can be a bear. A lot of people live in Somerville but commute into downtown. When there's not traffic, like off hours, that trip could take you 25 minutes. But when there is traffic, you're talking about over an hour of traffic. And sometimes you've got to do that on your way into work and then again on your way home from work. So my con number 2 is traffic and tourism. So despite those challenges, let's talk about my third pro of living in Charleston. That's the natural beauty. I grew up in a place where we didn't have waterways and beaches and marsh grass and Spanish oaks with the Spanish moss hanging down everywhere. Charleston is one of the most naturally beauty places that you could possibly visit or live in. And I think it's one of the reasons that despite some of the cons, people continue to gravitate and move here. We've got beaches from Wild Dunes down to Isle of Palms, Sullivan's Island, and then over to Folly Beach, and then you have Kiowa and you have Seabrook. All those different beaches have unique characteristics and they're all unique and fun to visit. And then we've got the waterways. You can get on the boat, you could be doing kayaking, fishing, water sports. Boating in Charleston is just an awesome year-round luxury that you get to have because of the natural beauty. If you're a bird lover, there's so much cool bird watching and stuff that you get to do here. I happen to be a big animal lover, and it's really fun to see the different types of birds that we see on the waterways of Charleston. The marsh grass is gorgeous, and it changes color year-round. In the spring, it's a vibrant green, and then through summer, you'll start to see it change a little bit. In the wintertime, it turns into hues of yellow. I just think it's fascinating to watch this wildlife continue to change and evolve. But perhaps the most beautiful thing you'll see in Charleston are the live oak trees. They call them live oaks because they don't lose their leaves in the winter, and they're covered in moss. The most iconic of the live oaks is a tree on Johns Island called Angel Oak. I believe that tree is over 1,000 years old, maybe 1,400 years old. To see it, branches sprawling literally hundreds of yards, is a marvel. The beauty of Charleston cannot be understated. And just come and visit and you'll see what I mean. Now let's shift gears from some man-made challenges to Mother Nature's challenges. Our con number 3 is hurricane risk and flooding. Charleston is called the Lowcountry. It's called the Lowcountry because we're basically at sea level. In fact, there are some parts of downtown that are built below sea level. flooding is a constant. And because we're so close to the Atlantic Ocean, hurricane is always a threat. Typically, we have a hurricane evacuation every 2 to 3 years. That doesn't mean a hurricane hits Charleston directly every 2 to 3 years. In fact, the last big hurricane was Hurricane Hugo in 1989. But it does mean that we feel like we're at risk for a hurricane every 2 to 3 years. Charleston, because it's a little bit of a southerly facing city when it comes to the way that the city is positioned, doesn't usually get the direct hurricane. Sometimes those hurricanes just continue straight up the coast and hit up higher, or they come across Florida. But still, if a big hurricane is brewing out there and is coming up that coast, the city of Charleston likes to shut everything down and evacuate the city just in case. This can be kind of a drawback because you're not working, your kids aren't going to school, and you have to take a mandatory vacation out of town to keep yourself safe. The other risk here is flooding, and many streets of downtown Charleston do flood at a king tide and a big rain. Not even during hurricane season, just sometimes during a big rain and high tide. King tide is when the moon is positioned in just a certain way that the tide is going to be bigger than normal, and those floods can be very tall and intimidating. When this happens, you can't drive your car downtown on some of the streets. And you might not be able to get out of your neighborhood if you live in a low-lying neighborhood. What this means for you too is higher costs for insurance on hurricane insurance and flood insurance. One of the things you're really going to want to look at when you buy a home in Charleston is, what's the flood elevation certificate say? The best flood elevation is X. That means you are not really at risk for flooding. I still recommend flood insurance. The next best one is considered AE. That means you're moderately considered flooding risk. Those insurances are usually in the $600 a year range. The worst flood zone is a V flood zone. And V stands for velocity, because high velocity winds, high chance of hurricane threat. These are your beachfront estates, the ones that are right on the waterfront. If you have an older home built below today's elevated home guidelines, your flood insurance in a V area could cost you $10,000 a year or more. So that's one of the bigger cons of living in Charleston, is hurricane risk and flooding. One of my favorite pros of living in Charleston is that it's an outdoor recreation paradise. This is year-round golfing, year-round fishing, year-round surfing, year-round walking. The snow and the sleet and the rain, they never keep you from doing the things you love to do outside. Here we are on Shim Creek. We can see people are boating and fishing right now. Fishing in Charleston is some of the best on the East Coast. We got giant boats right here. They're gonna go out deep sea fishing, catch fish like sailfish, marlin, mahi. Deep sea fishing right from Charleston is fantastic. If you're a waterway fisherman, you got red drum, flounder. It's a fisherman's paradise. I like to golf. Golfing is year-round, and we've got great golf courses here. If you like to kayak, stand-up paddleboard. If you like to bike, there's incredible biking trails all over the city. One of the best pros here is the outdoor lifestyle. The next con, and most people aren't a fan of this, is massive heat and humidity. In the summertime, it can get to 95 with a heat index that's 115. It will be the hottest you've ever felt in your life. And if you're not inside in the AC, and if you're not in the water, you're gonna feel pretty hot and sticky, like I do now. Get used to feeling sweaty in the summertime. The heat and humidity can get sweltering, but there's ways to mitigate that. Like I said, make sure you get to the beach where you got a cool breeze. Go spend some time on the water. And if you need to, in the middle of the day, spend time in the air conditioning. Most people like to get outside in the very early morning hours before the heat kicks up, or after dinner at dusk. That's the way you can mitigate this con of heat and humidity. Here we are at Tavern and Table on Shim Creek. And before we talk about one of the best pros of Charleston, which is the incredible food scene, I want to talk about one of the drawbacks to living in Charleston first, which is limited job market availability. Much of Charleston's economy is tied to tourism, and there are some limited professional roles. There's something also known as the sunshine tax, and it's real. This means that you might take a 20% pay cut to live in Charleston versus areas in the Northeast and maybe Boston or New York that have more bustling job environments with more diverse job opportunities. So a con of living in Charleston is we have high housing costs with maybe lower pay, and job market is a bit of a challenge. But if you can find a great paying job here, man, this is one of the coolest places you could possibly work and live. Let's go check out the food scene. All right, now let's talk about one of the coolest pros of living in Charleston, the food scene. Charleston has so many incredible restaurants, you literally won't have time to get to them all. We are always looking at the newest hot spots and they just keep popping up. The food scene is incredible. Downtown is filled with some of the best restaurants in the United States. Charleston's food scene rivals cities like New York or Miami or San Francisco. It's one of the best foodie cities in the entire country. Here on Shim Creek, we're at Tavern and Table, one of our favorite local restaurants. But downtown, you're gonna have James Beard Award winners on every corner. It is just an awesome thing, and if you are a foodie like I am, you are gonna love the food scene in Charleston. One of the cons of living in Charleston is a lack of major amenities. South Carolina does not have a major professional sports team. Charleston itself doesn't have a major professional sports team or a major collegiate sports team. We've got the College of Charleston and their basketball program is wonderful, but Clemson football is a few hours away. South Carolina football is a few hours away. And the NFL has the Carolina Panthers, but they're in North Carolina. So we don't have major professional sports teams, and that could be a drawback for some people. Shopping in Charleston is also limited compared to places like New York or Chicago or Atlanta. There's no Saks, there's no Nordstroms. So if you are a shopping enthusiast, you do have King Street downtown, which I think has really wonderful shopping, but it may not be as robust as some of the biggest cities in the United States. Also, a limitation of Charleston is late night entertainment. Charleston shuts down about midnight every night. So if you're somebody that loves to stay out at bars until really late and have that really cool, vibrant late night scene, Charleston might not be your spot. The other con of Charleston is a lack of public transportation. You basically need your own car, and I mean that's like the only way to get around because public transportation is not one of our strengths here in Charleston. Another con of Charleston is education system challenges. South Carolina in general is not known for having the best public education options, and Charleston is not immune to those public education challenges. There are some areas that have very good test scores, and if you reach out to me and my team, we can help guide you to the places where you can check out school test scores yourself and know which school systems are going to perform best. My children go to public schools in Mount Pleasant, and these happen to be some of the better schools in Charleston. So there are places that you can have great public schools, but overcrowding is common. With all the influx of people coming to Charleston, sometimes it's hard for the infrastructure to keep up. You'll see classes sometimes with 30 plus kids. And this can put a challenge on buses and getting children where they need to go. So education challenges can be a problem. And if you are really concerned about that, we have some wonderful private school options, but private school can be expensive. Like Porter Gowd, for example, has an annual tuition around $25,000 a year. If you have 2 kids, that's a $50,000 annual bill to send your children to private school. So education challenges can be either costly or you just need to pick the right neighborhood and school system to live in if you want your children to have the best education in South Carolina. Let's talk about a cool pro of Charleston. It's got a strong sense of history and culture. Charleston is like a living museum. Downtown, you have homes that are 300 plus years old. Cobblestone streets. It is one of the coolest cities on the East Coast when it comes to history and culture. Some of the cultural events that you see in Charleston are Spoleto Festival. This is a weeks-long festival that celebrates the arts. You'll have different performances, dance and music and art. It's a really cool scene that happens in springtime every single year here in Charleston. We also have really cool art and history museums. There's a really cool history museum thing that you can do downtown if you just love history. The Hunley, which is one of the submarines, early American history. It might have been the first submarine, I think, in the United States, is downtown Charleston. There's also the USS Yorktown, which is a real wartime ship. And you can visit that and see historic planes that were used in real wars here in the United States. The history in Charleston is just freaking awesome. One of my favorite things to do when it comes to history in Charleston is take a carriage tour. When my friends come in town, I love getting on a carriage tour because the guides are so knowledgeable about all the cool stuff that happened in each of these old historic buildings, from our founding fathers of George Washington visiting, and just hearing all the cool stories about what it was really like in Charleston hundreds of years ago. All right, so in conclusion, let's face it, Charleston may not be the perfect place in the world, but it could be perfect for you. We've talked about some cons today, like infrastructure challenges, hurricane and flood risks, high insurance costs. We've also talked about some really incredible pros, like the incredible outdoor lifestyle, the beauty of Charleston, how fun the people are, and the awesome food scene. If you're trying to figure out if Charleston's right for you, shoot me an email, sales@mattoneilteam.com, or reach out by phone, 843-619-0401. I've helped over 5,000 families make a great relocation here to Charleston. We can help you navigate which neighborhood and which lifestyle choice of Charleston is gonna be best for you. Now, before we go, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, Matt, but what neighborhood is gonna be best for me? I've got you covered. Watch the next video here where I break down each of the best neighborhoods in Charleston, from price points to lifestyle. Trust me, watching this video will save you weekends in the car driving around trying to figure out the different neighborhoods of Charleston. All right, we'll see you on the next video.